This is the QTV Nightly News coming to you from our studio on Caraba Avenue, and I am Andy Kema. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. In his Assumption Day message, the Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Banjul, the Most Reverend Dr. Gabriel Mendy, has said that God has shown the power of his arm in Mary's Assumption. Farmers in Sami in the Central River region are worried about a month-long drought affecting their region, which they fear may lead to crop failure. We hear from the Executive Director of the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons, NATIP, on the growing challenge of human trafficking in the Gambia and the agency's critical role in addressing this issue. The Gambia Tourism and Hospitality Industry Institute, GTHI, held a validation of its capacity needs assessment report. In international news, presiding over United Nations Security Council for the month of August 2024, Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio told the UN Security Council in New York that Africa cannot wait any longer to take its rightful representation in the Security Council. Those were the headlines, and now look at the stories in detail. If you're just tuning in, this is QTV News. In his Assumption Day message, the Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Banjul, the Most Reverend Dr. Gabriel Mendy, has said that God has shown the power of his arm in Mary's Assumption. More in this report by GTHI.
Thursday, the 15th of August, is the Assumption of Mary, also known as the Dormition of the Virgin Mary. This feast commemorates the departure of Mary from this life and the assumption of her body into heaven. Most Reverend Dr. Gabriel Mendy, Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Banjul, said Mary was assumed into heaven wholly and solely by God's power to preserve her body and soul from corruption of sin and death.
But our assumption is very relevant for us because it reveals what God has done and will do for those who are also faithful, obedient, and humble like Mary in their lifetime. The central message of this year's Feast of the Assumption I therefore present to all believers in Christ, our Muslim brothers and sisters, and other believers, and all people of goodwill, is God has shown us the power of his arm in Mary's Assumption.
Bishop Mendy also states that celebrating the Assumption of Mary is not a mere historical event, but a meaningful and relevant feast in our spiritual life with God.
In our spiritual and human lives as believers and members of Christ's body, the Church, God also shows and proves his power to us in various ways and at different moments of our lives. We should equally recognize and acknowledge God's power like Mary when it is revealed and manifested in us and our fellow human beings. As the creator of heaven and earth and our source of life, God still manifests his power in our lives. He fully protects, sustains, and renews us in our spiritual and human existence. In our weakness and struggles against the forces of sin and evil, God equally reveals the power of his arm. He assists us with his strength and guidance, and he enables us to overcome our weakness and resist the temptation, misinformation, and lies of the evil one and its agents.
And what positive impact should the glorious Assumption of Mary into heaven have on believers?
We should for that reason sing Mary's song of praise in union with her as we celebrate the manifestation of God's power in her glorious Assumption into heaven. At the same time, we should express our own praise and gratitude to God in our daily lives when we witness and experience the ongoing revelation of his power in our times. Our celebration of the feast of Our Lady's Assumption into heaven should therefore have a positive and personal impact on us.
On behalf of the Diocese of Banjul, the Bishop finally wished all the priests, deacons, religious, seminarians, and the faithful of the diocese brothers and sisters in Christ, Muslim friends and relatives, and believers of other faiths, a meaningful and fulfilling celebration of the solemnity of the Assumption of Mary. For QTV News, I am Juldenyai.
Farmers in Sami in the Central River region are worried about a month-long drought affecting their region, which they fear may lead to crop failure if the situation continues. This report by Jibril Dem is narrated by Juldenyai.
Every year, farmers look forward to the rainy season, given the importance of rainfall for their crops. However, for the farmers of Sami, it is over a month and some days since it last rained, which is seriously affecting crops and grazing animals. The crops are dying because of the extreme heat, and the grassland in the bush are dying up, leaving farmers in despair. Chernombake, a farmer and resident of Lamenkoto Badala, assessed this year's rainy season a failure so far because of the drought, and as only a few farmers have completed sowing their seed. He says the rest of them are still waiting for the rains. It's almost mid-August, and unusually for this time of the year, sowing is incomplete. Mr. Mbake adds that farmers will still sow their seeds because they need the hay to feed their animals in the dry season, despite not being hopeful of a good harvest. He calls on the government and others to help.
We have a lot of delay in the rains coming during this year's rainy season.
Sheikh Cham, also a farmer and a native of Kora, says things looked promising at the beginning of this year's rainy season, given the focus, and farmers were optimistic. However, he says their hopes have been dashed. He echoes the appeal for help.
With the help of God, we are seeking support from the government and anyone who can come to our aid. We really need help because we have suffered this year. Farmers depend solely on the rainy season.
Mariama Kamara, another farmer, says this is a difficult moment for farmers. We haven't seen a single drop of rain, and we are encountering a lot of challenges because rice is very expensive. It costs $2,250. I am the head of the household, and I am responsible for the feeding of my family. I depend on this farm to make ends meet. Now it appears my family will not have any food. Abdullah Ba, a farmer in Bani, also expressed similar sentiments and also appeals for support to farmers.
We sow groundnuts during the rainy season. Without rain, we cannot sow the groundnuts. However, cows can be planted and it will survive.
Water is the most essential thing for plants, animals, and humans for survival. For farmers, it is crucial to get regular and dependable rainy season during what is the traditional farming season. If there is a failure in rainfall, there can be many potentially devastating consequences, as can be seen by what the farmers of Sami are facing. For QTV News, I am Juldenyai.
QTV's Lena E. Igwenyiba talks to the Executive Director of the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons, NATIP, on the growing challenge of human trafficking in the Gambia and the agency's critical role in addressing this issue. Here is the report.
A 2022 U.S. Department of State report revealed that 50 million people were victims of modern slavery on any given day in 2021. Of these, an estimated 27.6 million were trapped in forced labor, while another 22 million were in forced marriages across the globe. Unfortunately, the Gambia is not immune to this crisis. Although the government has yet to fully meet the minimum standards for eliminating trafficking, it is making notable strides towards improvement. Due to these efforts, the Gambia remains on Tier 2 in the global ranking of anti-trafficking measures on the U.S. Department of State's most recent Trafficking in Persons TIP report. Aissatou Dabo, the Executive Director of the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons, NATIP, provides insights into the current state of human trafficking in the Gambia, outlining how NATIP is working tirelessly to combat this issue.
We do have Gambians that have been trafficked out of the Gambia. We do have other nationals that have been trafficked in the Gambia. And Gambia is also being used as a transit country like other nations. Despite all the challenges that we may face in respect of trafficking based on the current trends and patterns, we have an agency that is tirelessly and endlessly working to ensure that the current state of trafficking in the Gambia is not continuing to be alarming.
Ms. Dabo also elaborates on the convictions made in trafficking cases within the country, emphasizing the actions taken to bring perpetrators to justice.
In the past 18 months, there have been 3 convictions of trafficking in persons, 1 Gambian and 2 non-nationals. And at the State Central Prisons Mile 2, the Gambia has been able to record a cumulative term of imprisonment of 45 years for these 3 individuals. Each of them are currently serving 15 years in prison, in addition to paying a fine of $50,000. And in the last case, the court ordered for compensation of $250,000 to each of the 2 victims that were involved in the case.
She further highlights NATIP's dedicated efforts to reintegrate victims of human trafficking back into society, focusing on providing essential psychosocial support to help them rebuild their lives.
We ensure that at NATIP we provide counseling for these victims, and counseling sessions go on weekly at the agency, and this is also part of the reintegration process. So when you deal with what's up here, then you move on to the next phase of what do they need to take the next step, and that is where reintegration packages come in.
In a call to action, Aissatou Dabo urges everyone to remain vigilant and speak out against trafficking. She emphasizes the importance of community awareness and participation in eradicating this heinous crime.
Recruitment agencies that are there telling people, or there are jobs that are available in so and so country, we will facilitate your visas and your fees, you will be paid a certain amount. You have to be very mindful and ensure that you undertake due diligence before you sign up for things like this. And the fact that when you're traveling, you don't tell anyone because someone might ruin it, that puts us in a lot of trouble under the pretext of noble, and then you end up being in trouble, and it might take a while before you get saved.
The National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons, NATIP, was established under the Trafficking in Persons Act 2007. And victims are encouraged to visit the NATIP office or seek help from someone who can connect them to the agency. Reporting for QTV News, I am Lena Igwenyiba.
We will now go for a commercial break. When we return, we have more local and international news stories. Do stay tuned.
Need a quick car service? Espas Motors has got you covered. From quick scans to oil changes and fuel filter replacements, we handle it all within an hour. Take advantage of our exclusive promotion with 35% off labor and 10% off service. Espas Motors is located at Bertil Harding Highway, opposite Kotu Power Station. Book now. Call 353-4444, 352-2222, 385-6822. Hurry. Offer ends September 7th. Espas Motors.
Welcome to the future of transportation in the Gambia. The Bertil Harding Highway, a 22-kilometer double carriageway, is set to revolutionize travel and connectivity in our beloved country. A 3-lane highway means more space for vehicles, smoother traffic flow, and reduced congestion. Each lane has a specific purpose. The leftmost lane for overtaking and faster vehicles, the middle lane for standard driving, and the rightmost lane for slower and turning vehicles.
Welcome back, and this is QTV News. The Gambia Tourism and Hospitality Industry Institute, GTHI, held a validation on Wednesday of its capacity needs assessment report that aims to improve GTHI's curriculum human capacity and training facilities to better meet the rapidly evolving demands of the tourism and hospitality industry. Osman Jata has more.
The GTHI Curriculum and Capacity Needs Assessment Project is in line with the development aspirations of the National Tourism Policy 2021-2031. 7 years since the institution's last program review, stakeholders in the industry converged to validate the newly designed curriculum. Momodu Singarte is a Director General.
To look at a curriculum that is being reviewed, but also to do a needs assessment for the Institute is by no means a very significant milestone in the operation and the development agenda of the Institute. I am very much convinced by the work done by the consultants and also the experts that are around the table to look at this work and do the final validation for it to be implemented.
The GTHI offers training in 4 disciplines: bar and restaurant service, housekeeping and laundry, front office and reception, and cookery and pastry. Isaitu Drame, the Deputy Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Tourism and Culture, represented the Minister of Tourism at the event.
Delivery has become one of the key success factors for any tourism destination, and this success factor is also linked to product development and destination marketing. Given these shifting dynamics in hospitality, with the emphasis on quality service delivery to meet the needs of discerning guests,
a team of 4 consultants conducted a wide range of research to prepare the final curriculum report for GTHI. Lisa Gordon-Davies, the human resources specialist, explains the methodology her team used to conduct the research.
We then interviewed industry stakeholders, a whole range of industry stakeholders from different sectors of the industry. We interviewed hoteliers, tour operators, travel agents, restaurateurs, chefs, all member of people in the industry. We then had to analyze all of that data and come up with themes of what their concerns and their skills gaps were in the industry, and then we had to report on our findings in that regard.
The consultancy reports indicates that 65% of the overall GTHI staff have completed higher studies. Interestingly, the academic department holds a greater number of higher educated staff. The consultants suggest additional training and upskilling in education science and academic management. Every year, hundreds of students enrolled in the school to seek knowledge from experienced and qualified lecturers in a conducive learning environment, as well as the availability of materials for both practical and theory works. Since its inception in 1981 as the Gambia Hotel School, to date, GTHI has shaped the lives of several Gambians who are now making breakthrough in the Gambia's tourism industry. This latest curriculum validation is expected to go a long way in shaping the Gambia's tourism industry. Osman Jata reporting for QTV News.
On the commemorations of International Youth Day, celebrated annually on the 12th August, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in the Gambia, Carl Frederick Paul, implored governments and stakeholders to engage youth and create a space for them to be involved in decision-making processes and allocate budgets for their development. He was speaking at QTV this morning on Tuesday. Here is Lolly M. Kamara.
International Youth Day was first celebrated on August 12, 2000. And ever since, the day has been used to mobilize the youth in different sectors and manage resources to address global problems. The theme for this year is From Clicks to Progress, Youth Digital Pathways for Sustainable Development. This underscores the transformative potential of digital technology in empowering youth to drive sustainable development and nation building. Here is the United Nations Resident Coordinator in the Gambia, Carl Frederick Paul.
If you look at the different SDGs, that is Sustainable Development Goals, there is not one that is for youth, right? Because youth is so transversal, it's so important.
Everything captures.
It captures. So in each SDGs, you'll have an indicators that is for the participation of youth. I think the way that we are, it's because they are into that, right? They are into the digital sphere very profoundly. So it's important that we capitalize, like the minister said, on this demographic potential to continue continue the work that we are doing and reach to more people and to raise awareness and support the effort of the countries in which we are all working to achieve the SDGs.
According to the United Nations, there are currently 1.8 billion young people between the ages of 10 and 24 in the world, making up the largest youth population in history. However, many young people still face barriers to accessing education, including poverty, conflict, and discrimination. To address these challenges, the United Nations has called for increased investment in education and for policies to promote inclusivity and equality in education. Carl Frederick Paul again.
If you engage just one set of the society of the youth, then you'll have a certain perspective. And the third point, it's ensure that the participation is safe, inclusive, and accessible. And I mean that it's for reduced mobility, with disability, have gender balance, for have all minorities included. It's important because the youth today is part of the society, but they will be also the youth that will lead us tomorrow, right? So it's important that we have to recognize that participation is beneficial to every one of us.
The United Nations resident coordinator gave this reassurance to the youths.
I want to reassure them also about the United Nations commitment to invest in their potential, but also to support their aspiration. But at the end, you see, working with the youth for the SDGs is the way to go, right? Because it's the implementers, I would say. It's the engine of making this possible. We have the policies, we have the framework, we have the budget, we have, all those big actors, including the United Nations, working towards the SDGs. But however, it's the young people that can enable us to have, they are the wheels of this big engine that we want to achieve the SDGs.
In today's digital age, technology has become an integral part of our daily lives. It is shaping the way we communicate, learn, and create new and existing things. And while we strive towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, the role of youths in leveraging digital tools for sustainable development cannot be overstated. For QTV News, Lolly M. Kamara.
We will now take a look at news away from home. Presiding over the United Nations Security Council for the month of August 2024, Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio told the UN Security Council in New York on Monday that Africa cannot wait any longer to take its rightful representation in the Security Council, as he expressed hope of Africa assuming permanent seats in the Council. Aliou Cisse tells us more.
The session addresses Africa's long-standing calls for greater representation on the Security Council, reflecting the continent's growing influence on the global stage. Chairing a meeting convened by Sierra Leone, the current holder of the Security Council's rotating presidency, President Julius Maada Bio echoed the long-standing campaign for African countries to get more Security Council seats, including 2 permanent and potentially veto-wielding spots. Bio is also the chair of the African Union Committee on UN Security Council reform.
The current lack of representation in the permanent category does not reflect the current global landscape, and it is fundamental to consider the structural changes for its rectification. Additionally, it is significant to evaluate the Security Council's performance and legitimacy to ensure its effectiveness in addressing global challenges.
This isn't the first time the Council has had calls for expanding and reshaping its membership. But President Bio's presence confirms the importance Africa attaches to the reform ahead of a UN Summit of the Future and the annual General Assembly gathering of world leaders next month.
I therefore register our profound thanks and appreciation to the member states, interest groups, and regional groups for their continued and unwavering support for Africa and the common African position in the intergovernmental negotiations at the UN General Assembly.
Set up in 1945 to try to maintain peace in the wake of World War II, the Security Council can levy sanctions, deploy peacekeeping missions, and otherwise pass resolutions that are legally binding. Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, emphasized the need for reform within the UN Security Council to rectify the underrepresentation of African nations, despite the continent being a central focus of many Council's discussions.
We cannot accept that the world's preeminent peace and security body lacks a permanent voice for a continent of well over 1 billion people, a young and rapidly growing population, making up 28% of the membership of the United Nations.
Despite its past, the Council has been blamed for failing to take a decisive action on the ongoing Israel-Palestine war on Gaza. The United States, Russia, China, Britain and France are permanent veto-yielding members. 10 other seats go to countries that get 2-year Council terms without veto power. The General Assembly elects them by region with 3 seats for Africa. Representatives from different countries told the Council that permanent seats must be urgently addressed. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cissé.
Before we end, here is a recap of the headlines. In his Assumption Day message, the Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Banjul, the Most Reverend Dr. Gabriel Mendy, has said that God has shown the power of his arm in Mary's Assumption. Farmers in Sami in the Central River region are worried about a month-long drought affecting their region, which they fear may lead to crop failure if the situation continues. We heard from the Executive Director of the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons, NATIP, on the growing challenge of human trafficking in the Gambia and the agency's critical role in addressing this issue. The Gambia Tourism and Hospitality Industry Institute, GTHI, held a validation on Wednesday of its capacity needs assessment report. In international news, presiding over the United Nations Security Council for the month of August 2024, Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio told the UN Security Council in New York that Africa cannot wait any longer to take its rightful representation in the Security Council. Well, that's all we have for you in this bulletin. Join us at 10 p.m. for another news bulletin. Thanks for watching.